March 18, 2006. Royal Pines Resort. Over 1,800 people packed into a ballroom for a kickboxing tournament. Then gunshots rang out. Knives flashed. Chairs became weapons. In seconds, the Gold Coast witnessed one of Australia's most violent bikie brawls. 3 men were shot, 2 were stabbed, and at the center of it all stood one man, a traitor who had switched sides. His name was Christopher Hudson, and his betrayal triggered a war that would reshape Australia's criminal underworld forever. Connection loop. But this wasn't just about one man. This was about territory, power, and billions of dollars in drug money flowing through Australia's party capital. The glitter strip had become a battleground, and the Hells Angels would stop at nothing to take it from the Finks. What happened next changed Queensland law enforcement forever. The Finks' rise on the Gold Coast. The Finks Motorcycle Club was born in Adelaide in 1969. Their name came from a comic strip called The Wizard of Id, where peasants would shout, "The king is a Fink." Their logo featured Boong, the king's jester, a fitting symbol for a club that would eventually become one of Australia's most feared organizations. The Gold Coast chapter of the Finks was officially established on April 22, 1986, registered under a company called Pompano Pitai Limited. For years, they operated as relatively small-time players, but as the 1990s ended, the Gold Coast's booming nightclub scene and drug market transformed them. Where the organization was involved in generally minor crimes prior to 1996, younger members who moved into positions of authority within the club led mafia-style extortion attempts, serious assaults, and significant drug trafficking. By 2000, the Finks controlled much of the Gold Coast's lucrative criminal underworld. The Gold Coast party scene had helped the Finks morph into a modern, organized crime-style outlaw gang. They ran protection rackets, controlled drug distribution, and established what police called a terror team, enforcers who collected money through intimidation and violence. The Gold Coast was theirs. But international heavyweights were watching. The Hells Angels arrive. The Hells Angels expanded to Australia in 1975, initially establishing chapters in Melbourne and Sydney. For decades, they built their empire through the eastern states, but the Gold Coast remained unconquered territory. The Hells Angels enjoyed a heavy presence in Brisbane, but were yet to establish a stranglehold on the coast. The problem was simple. The Finks controlled the streets, and traditional recruitment methods weren't working. One of the reasons the clubs don't like Hells Angels is because when they move into new areas, rather than starting fresh with recruitment, they try and patch over other clubs or poach members from resident gangs. They are also more prone to resort to violence than other gangs, particularly when they're moving in on new territory to monopolize criminal enterprise. The Angels needed an insider, someone who knew the Finks' operations, someone willing to betray his brothers. In late 2004, they found their man. The traitor, Christopher Wayne Hudson, was a former Gold Coast bouncer who had risen through the ranks of the Finks. He knew their operations, their members, their weaknesses. When Hudson patched over to the Angels in late 2004, the club had finally found a way in. His defection fueled the Angels' bitter rivalry with local stalwarts, the Finks. In the outlaw motorcycle world, switching clubs is the ultimate betrayal. It's considered worse than informing to police. Hudson hadn't just left. He was actively trying to recruit other Finks to join him. Hudson was shot twice by Bowden, believed by police to be an attempt on the life of the former Fink who had patched over to the Hells Angels in late 2004 and was trying to recruit other Finks members to join him. Tensions escalated through 2005. Drive-by shootings targeted Finks members' homes. The clubs prepared for war. The Ballroom Blitz. On the weekend of March 18, 2006, a kickboxing tournament at Royal Pines Resort drew bikers from across Australia. Adelaide-based Finks members were invited to the Glitter Strip for what was supposed to be a weekend of partying. Neither side expected the other to be there. We decided to go see the kickboxing event, and as the video shows, the Hells Angels were there, and we weren't to know they were there. When Finks enforcers spotted Hudson sitting ringside with his new Hells Angels brothers, rage took over. The melee broke out when Forbes threw a punch at Christopher Hudson. What followed became known as the Ballroom Blitz. Shots were fired, knives were pulled, and fists, feet, bottles, and chairs were used as weapons as Hells Angels. And Finks went head-to-head during a kickboxing match in the ballroom at the Royal Pines Resort. More than 1,800 people were caught in the violent melee, which made headlines around the world. 4 bickies were either shot or stabbed during the brawl, including former Finks member Christopher Hudson. He was allegedly shot by Shane Bowden as a payback for defecting to the Hells Angels. Hudson was hit in the chin and back. He survived, but the damage was done. Aftermath and Hudson's dark path. Bowden was jailed for 6 years over the Glitter Strip's wild Ballroom Blitz at Royal Pines Resort, where 3 people were shot and 2 stabbed. Nick the Knife Forbes was sentenced for grievous bodily harm after throwing punches and using a chair as a weapon. He served 27 months, but the most chilling aftermath came from the traitor himself. 14 months after the brawl, Christopher Hudson's violent nature erupted again, this time in Melbourne's CBD. On June 18, 2007, Hudson dragged his girlfriend out onto the street by her hair. 2 male bystanders, 43-year-old solicitor Brendan Keelar, and 25-year-old Dutch backpacker Paul de Ward attempted to assist her. Hudson pulled a gun and shot all 3. Keelar died in the street. Hudson pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 35 years before becoming eligible for parole. The man who sparked the Gold Coast's bloodiest bikie war would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The war continues. While the head-to-head melee sparked fears of an all-out Gold Coast bikie war, the clubs remained at loggerheads. Tattoo parlors, gyms, and private homes were shot at and torched. The Hells Angels Logan chapter was considered vulnerable as its numbers were low, and at one point risked losing its patch from the Hells Angels International Charter when they failed to retaliate in Queensland against the Finks over the Ballroom Blitz. The Angels regrouped. In 2012, Peter Siderorgos and Zeljko Steve Mitrovic, both senior Hells Angels members in Sydney, were granted nomad status and spearheaded a push into the Gold Coast, founding a chapter in the suburb of Burleigh Heads. Hells Angels fortified premises and installed security cameras in an industrial area at Burleigh on the Gold Coast. The location was partially in Black Ulan's territory and on the doorstep of longtime rivals, the Bandidos. The Finks fall and the Mongols take over. Everything changed in 2013. The Newman government's controversial VLAD laws targeted outlaw motorcycle gangs with unprecedented severity. The Hells Angels were one of 26 motorcycle clubs designated as criminal organizations in the state of Queensland under the Vicious Lawless Association Disestablishment, a VLAD, Act, which was passed on October 16, 2013. Facing legal annihilation, the Finks made a desperate move. In October 2013, a deal was brokered to patch over the Finks ahead of a proposed ban under anti-gang legislation. An estimated 90% of the Finks members joined the Mongols. The Mongols' patchover of the Finks was the largest ever motorcycle club amalgamation in Australia. Police stated in 2015 that the Hells Angels were now the most active club on the Gold Coast after anti-bikie laws weakened the rival Bandidos and Finks. The Hells Angels had won. The territory they'd spilled blood for was finally theirs. Legacy of blood. The rivalry's final victim came in October 2020. Shane Bowden, the same man who shot Christopher Hudson during the Ballroom Blitz, had patched over to the Mongols in 2013. But internal disputes led to his expulsion. He rejoined the Finks just before his death. Bowden was shot 21 times by 2 hooded gunmen in the driveway of his Gold Coast home. Police found a tracking device underneath the black BMW after Bowden was found dead in the driver's seat with the engine still running. Police charged the president of a Brisbane chapter of the Mongols with organizing the hit. The Gold Coast bikie wars claimed another life. A man who once pulled the trigger at Royal Pines now lay dead in his own driveway. A brutal reminder that in this world, loyalty means everything, and betrayal costs everything. The Ballroom. Blitz wasn't just a brawl, it was the beginning of a decade-long transformation. Queensland's toughest anti-bikie laws were born from the violence that erupted on the Gold Coast. The Finks, once the glitter strip's dominant force, were absorbed by the Mongols, and the Hells Angels achieved what they'd fought for since 2004, control of Australia's party capital. Today, the Gold Coast remains contested territory. Australia is home to 35 outlaw motorcycle gangs, with a combined membership of around 3,500 patched bickies. The battles continue, sometimes in public brawls, sometimes in execution-style hits. One truth remains. In the outlaw motorcycle world, power is taken in blood, and the Gold Coast has seen more than its share.